Number 1. It began in fire, with battleships sinking, oil burning, and 2,403 Americans dead. The 7th of December, 1941. The U.S. Pacific Fleet was crippled in 2 hours. 3 years and 8 months later, American warships filled Tokyo Bay as Japan surrendered. The Navy that died at Pearl Harbor rose from the harbor mud and built the greatest fleet in history. Number 2. On the 7th of December 1941, the U.S. Navy had 347 ships and 3,300 aircraft. By August 1945, it operated 6,768 ships and 40,912 aircraft. The fleet grew 20-fold in less than 4 years. America built carriers faster than Japan could sink them, submarines faster than they could be lost, and destroyers by the hundreds. Number 3. The USS Enterprise, CV-6, was returning from Wake Island on the 7th of December 1941 and missed the Pearl Harbor attack by hours. She arrived to find the harbor burning. Over the next 4 years, Enterprise fought in every major Pacific carrier battle except Coral Sea. She was hit by bombs, torpedoes, and kamikazes. She never sank. Her crew called her the Big E. Japanese propaganda claimed she'd been sunk 4 times. She survived them all. Number 4. Enterprise earned 20 battle stars, more than any other U.S. warship. She fought at Midway, Guadalcanal, the Philippine Sea, and Leyte Gulf. At the war's end, she was scheduled for preservation as a memorial. Budget cuts scrapped her instead. In 1958, Enterprise was sold for scrap metal and cut apart in New Jersey. Veterans protested. Congress ignored them. The most decorated ship of the war became razor blades. Number 5. The Essex-class aircraft carriers were 27,100 tons, carried 90 to 100 aircraft, made 33 knots, and mounted 12 5-inch guns, plus dozens of anti-aircraft weapons. They were fast, tough, and mass-produced. The first USS Essex was commissioned in December 1942. By war's end, 17 Essex-class carriers were in service. Japan couldn't match the production. Number 6. USS Franklin, CV-13, was hit by 2 250-kilogram bombs on the 19th of March 1945, while operating 50 miles off Japan. The bombs penetrated the flight deck and detonated among fueled and armed aircraft. The explosions killed 724 men instantly and wounded 265 more. Franklin listed 13 degrees, burned for hours, and suffered secondary explosions. The crew refused to abandon ship. They controlled the fires, corrected the list, and sailed Franklin 12,000 miles to Brooklyn Navy Yard under her own power. Number 7. Lieutenant Commander Joseph O'Callaghan, Franklin's Catholic chaplain, organized firefighting parties, led men into burning compartments to rescue trapped sailors, and gave last rites while standing in pools of aviation fuel with flames surrounding him. He received the Medal of Honor, the only chaplain in Navy history to receive it for combat action. He survived and died in 1964 at age 59. Number 8. USS Bunker Hill, CV-17, was hit by 2 kamikazes in 30 seconds on the 11th of May 1945 off Okinawa. The first kamikaze hit the flight deck, exploding among parked aircraft. The second hit 30 seconds later in nearly the same spot. Fires consumed the flight deck. 3, 4, 6 men died. Bunker Hill was withdrawn from combat and never returned. The ship survived. The war ended 3 months later. Bunker Hill never fought again. Number 9. The Independence-class light carriers were converted from cruiser hulls. They displaced 11,000 tons, carried 30 aircraft, and made 31 knots. 9 were built between 1,942 and 1,943. They served as fast carrier task force escorts, providing additional aircraft and anti-aircraft protection. USS Princeton was sunk by a single bomb at Leyte Gulf, the only Independence-class carrier lost during the war. Number 10. Escort carriers, jeep carriers, or baby flatops, were slow, lightly armed, and built on merchant ship or oiler hulls. They carried 20 to 30 aircraft and provided air support for amphibious landings, convoy protection, and anti-submarine warfare. Over 120 were built. They were cheap, quick to build, and expendable. 6 were sunk in combat. Crews called them combustible, vulnerable, expendable based on their hull classification CVE. Number 11. On the 25th of October 1944, during the Battle of Samar, 6 escort carriers faced 4 Japanese battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers. The American carriers had 3-inch armor. The Japanese battleship Yamato had 16-inch guns that could sink a carrier with one hit. The carriers ran. Destroyers and destroyer escorts attacked the Japanese fleet with torpedoes and 5-inch guns. The suicidal attacks confused the Japanese, who withdrew. All 6 carriers survived. 3 destroyers and destroyer escorts were sunk. Number 12. USS Gambier Bay was the only US carrier sunk by naval gunfire. During the Battle off Samar, she was hit by over 50 shells from Japanese cruisers at ranges as close as 10,000 yards. She sank at 9:07 a.m. on the 25th of October 1944. 147 crew members died. Over 700 survived the sinking but spent hours in Bermudas, the water surrounded by sharks, before rescue. Some survivors were in the water for 50 hours. Number 13. The Casablanca-class escort carrier USS Street Low was sunk by the first organized kamikaze attack on the 25th of October 1944, the same day as the Battle off Samar. A Zero fighter loaded with a 250-kilogram bomb dove through anti-aircraft fire and crashed into Streetlow's flight deck. The bomb penetrated to the hangar deck and detonated among armed aircraft and munitions. Streetlow exploded and sank in 30 minutes. 114 crew members died. Number 14. Naval aviation squadrons embarked on carriers for 6 to 12-month deployments. Fighter squadrons flew F-4F Wildcats, F-6F Hellcats or F-4U Corsairs. Dive bomber squadrons flew SBD Dauntlesses or SB-2C Helldivers. Torpedo bomber squadrons flew TBF divided by TBM Avengers. Each carrier air group included 70 to 100 aircraft and operated as an integrated strike force. Number 15. Carrier pilots flew combat missions in shifts: morning searches, midday strikes, afternoon patrols, night combat air patrol. Pilots flew multiple missions per day during intense operations. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, some pilots flew 4 missions in 15 hours. Exhaustion killed pilots who survived combat. Some fell asleep in the cockpit on approach to the carrier. Number 16. Landing on a carrier required catching one of 4 arresting wires stretched across the flight deck with a tailhook. The deck was 500 feet long. Pilots had one chance to land before circling for another attempt. At night or in bad weather, landing became terrifying. Pilots who missed all 4 wires slammed into the crash barrier, a net stretched across the deck to stop aircraft. Some aircraft went over the side. Pilots drowned before rescue. Number 17. The landing signal officer, LSO, stood on the port side of the flight deck and guided pilots to safe landings using coloured paddles. The LSO signaled too high, too low, too fast or too slow. If the approach was dangerous, the LSO waved off the pilot, ordering them to abort and try again. LSOs saved hundreds of lives and watched dozens of crashes they couldn't prevent. Number 18. Lieutenant Commander Eugene Esmond led 6 obsolete Fairey Swordfish biplanes from HMS Victorious in an attack on the German battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau in the English Channel on the 12th of February 1942. All 6 aircraft were shot down. All 18 crew members died, including Esmond. Not a single torpedo hit. Esmond received the Victoria Cross posthumously. The attack was suicidal but ordered. British and American naval aviators faced similar missions throughout the war. Number 19. The Battle of the Coral Sea, May 4–8, 1942, was the first carrier versus carrier battle in history. American and Japanese ships never saw each other. Aircraft from both sides attacked enemy carriers over 150 miles away. USS Lexington was sunk. USS Yorktown was damaged. The Japanese carrier Shoho was sunk. The fleet carrier Shokaku was damaged. Tactically a draw, strategically an American victory, Japan's advance toward Australia was stopped. Number 20. Lexington was hit by 2 torpedoes and 2 bombs on the 8th of May 1942. The damage was survivable. 3 hours later, gasoline vapors ignited in a massive internal explosion. Fires spread uncontrollably. At 5:07 p.m., Captain Frederick Sherman ordered abandon ship. 2,770 crew members were rescued. 216 died. Lexington burned through the night. The destroyer USS Phelps sank her with 5 torpedoes at 7:52 p.m. on May 8. She went down with her battle flag flying. Number 21. The Yorktown, damaged at Coral Sea, was repaired at Pearl Harbor in 48 hours. Welders worked around the clock. She sailed to Midway with repair crews still aboard. At Midway, Yorktown was hit by 3 bombs and 2 torpedoes over 2 days. She refused to sink. On the 7th of June 1942, while under tow, the Japanese submarine I-168 torpedoed her again. She finally rolled over and sank at dawn on June 7. She had bought America time to prepare for the battles ahead. Number 22. After Midway, Japan never regained carrier superiority. The 4 carriers sunk. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu were irreplaceable. Japan's pilot training couldn't replace losses. American pilot production accelerated. By 1943, American carriers outnumbered Japanese carriers 3-1. By 1944, the ratio was 1-0-1. Number 23. Fast carrier task forces operated multiple carrier groups together, 4 to 6 carriers, escorted by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. Task Force 38 and Task Force 5, 8 same ships, different commanders depending on which fleet was operating, could put 500-plus aircraft in the air simultaneously. They conducted raids on Japanese bases, from the Marshalls to Japan itself, providing mobile air power wherever needed. Number 24. Admiral Mark Mitscher commanded Fast Carrier Task Force 58 during 1944 bis 1945. He was 57, slight, soft-spoken, and one of naval aviation's pioneers, one of the first men to fly off a ship in 1912. Mitscher understood carrier warfare intuitively. He positioned carriers aggressively, rotated air groups efficiently, and supported his pilots fiercely. When pilots returned from long missions after dark, Mitscher ordered every ship in the task force to turn on lights despite submarine risk. He valued pilots over security. Number 25. On the 20th of June 1944, during the Battle of the Philippine Sea, Mitscher launched a strike at extreme range, 300 miles, late in the afternoon. Pilots attacked the Japanese fleet at dusk and returned after dark with fuel exhausted. Mitscher ordered the task force to turn on the lights. Every ship illuminated. Pilots landed on any carrier with a clear deck. 80 aircraft crashed or ditched. 49 aviators died. 160 were rescued. Mitscher's decision saved the rest. Number 26. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, June 19 to 21,944, was nicknamed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Japanese carrier aircraft attacked the American fleet in 4 waves. American F-6F Hellcat fighters, directed by radar and controlled by fighter directors, slaughtered them. 600 Japanese aircraft were shot down. Only 29 American aircraft were lost. Japan's carrier aviation never recovered. The Imperial Japanese Navy still had carriers, but no trained pilots to fly from them. Number 27. Lieutenant Alexander Vrasiu shot down 6 Japanese aircraft in 8 minutes on the 19th of June 1944 during the Turkey Shoot. He ran out of ammunition after the 6th kill. He returned to Lexington, landed, rearmed, refueled, and launched again. By war's end, WWII had 19 confirmed kills. He survived the war and died in 2015 at age 96. Number 28. Submarines accounted for 55% of all Japanese shipping sunk during the war. 1,300 merchant ships, totaling 5.3 million tons, and 214 warships, including 1 battleship and 8 carriers. Submarine warfare strangled Japan's economy. Oil from the Dutch East Indies couldn't reach Japan. Rice from Southeast Asia rotted in warehouses. Japanese civilians starved while ships sat in Puthao harbours for lack of fuel. Number 29. The Gato-class submarine displaced 1,525 tons, carried 24 torpedoes, mounted a 5-inch deck gun, and had a crew of 80. Range was 11,000 miles. They could patrol for 75 days. 77 Gato-class submarines were built between 1941 and 1943. They hunted throughout the Pacific, from Japanese home waters to the South China Sea. 41 were lost. Over 3,500 submariners died. Number 30. Submarine duty was voluntary. Men volunteered for higher pay, better food, and a sense of elite status. Submarine crews received steak and ice cream rations, while surface sailors ate powdered eggs and canned meat. The trade-off was risk. Submarines that went on patrol and didn't return were listed overdue, presumed lost. No wreckage, no survivors, no explanation, just gone. Number 31. USS Tang, SS-306, commanded by Commander Richard O'Kane, sank 33 Japanese ships in 5 war patrols, the highest total of any U.S. submarine. On the 24th of October, 1944, during her 5th patrol, Tang fired her last torpedo at a Japanese transport. The torpedo malfunctioned, circled back, and struck Tang. The submarine sank in 180 feet of water. 78 crew members died. 9 escaped the sinking submarine, including O'Kane. Only 5 survived the night in the water. O'Kane received the Medal of Honor. He died in 1994 at age 83. Number 32. Submarine escape from sunken boats was possible in shallow water using Momsen lungs, rebreathing devices that allowed men to ascend slowly while exhaling to prevent lung expansion. Escapes from depths over 200 feet were usually fatal. Men who escaped too quickly suffered the bends, nitrogen bubbles in the bloodstream that caused paralysis, agony, and death. Survivors sometimes wished they'd stayed with the boat. Number 33. USS Wahoo, SS-238, commanded by Dudley Mush Morton, sank 20 Japanese ships in 5 patrols. Morton was aggressive, often attacking on the surface at night, using the deck gun to save torpedoes. On October 11, 1943, Wahoo was sunk by Japanese aircraft in the La Perouse Strait between Hokkaido and Sakhalin. All 80 crew members died. The wreck was found in 2006. Morton and his crew were still aboard. Number 34. Submarine Commander Eugene Fluckey commanded USS Barb, SS-220, and pioneered aggressive surface attacks, rocket bombardment of shore installations, and sabotage. On the 23rd of July 1945, Fluckey led a landing party that blew up a Japanese train with demolition charges. Barb was the only submarine to sink a train. Fluckey received the Medal of Honor and survived the war. He died in 2007 at age 93. Number 35. The Mark 14 torpedo's defects were catastrophic. Magnetic detonators exploded prematurely or not at all. Depth mechanisms ran 10 feet deeper than set. Contact detonators failed to fire on perpendicular hits. Submarine commanders complained for 18 months. The Bureau of Ordnance denied problems existed. In September 1943, after field testing by submarine commanders proved the defects, fixes were finally implemented. Number 36. Commander Lawson Red Ramage attacked a Japanese convoy on the 31st of July 1944, while commanding USS Pash, SS-384. He surfaced in the middle of the convoy at night and engaged multiple ships simultaneously with torpedoes and deck gun. Pash sank a tanker, a transport, and damaged several others. Ramage received the Medal of Honor. Pash survived the war and was decommissioned in 1946. Number 37. American submarines rescued 504 downed pilots during the war. Submarines stationed near Japanese-held islands served as lifeguard duty, waiting submerged for aircraft returning from strikes. When pilots ditched, submarines surfaced and retrieved them. Pilots who knew submarines were nearby took risks they wouldn't otherwise attempt. Knowing someone was watching meant the difference between life and death. Number 38. Lieutenant George H.W. Bush, flying a TBM Avenger, was shot down on the 2nd of September 1944 during a strike on Chichijima. He bailed out, inflated his life raft, and paddled away from the island. The submarine, USS Finback, rescued him 4 hours later. Bush recovered aboard the submarine, then transferred to his carrier and returned to flight duty. He completed his tour, survived the war, and later became the 41st President of the United States. Number 39. Destroyers were called tin cans for their thin armour, half-inch steel plate. They displaced 2,100 tons, mounted 5 5-inch guns and 10 torpedo tubes, made 35 knots, and had a crew of 300. They escorted carriers, screened battleships, hunted submarines, bombarded beaches, rescued downed pilots, and fought surface actions. Destroyers were the workhorses of the fleet. Number 40. USS Johnston, DD 557, Commander Ernest Evans commanding, attacked the Japanese battleship Yamato during the Battle off Sama on the 25th of October 1944. Johnston was hit repeatedly by 14-inch and 6-inch shells. She fought for 2 hours, firing over 200 5-inch rounds and all 10 torpedoes before sinking. Evans went down with his ship. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. 186 of Johnston's 327 crew died. Number 41. The wreck of USS Johnston was discovered in October 2021 at a depth of 21,180 feet, the deepest shipwreck ever found. Her hull, number 557, was still visible. The ship rested upright on the ocean floor, 76 years after sinking. Survivors of Johnston's crew had long since passed away. The ship remains a war grave, protected by law, undisturbed. Number 42. Fletcher-class destroyers were the most numerous class, 175 built between 1942 and 1945. They were improved versions of earlier designs with better anti-aircraft armament, more reliable machinery and longer range. 19 Fletcher-class destroyers were sunk during the war. The rest served through Korea, Vietnam and beyond. Some served foreign navies until the 1992nd, 50 years after launch. Number 43. Destroyer escorts were smaller, slower and cheaper than destroyers. They displaced 1,400 tons, made 24 knots, and mounted 3 3-inch guns and anti-submarine weapons. Over 500 were built. They escorted convoys, hunted submarines, and provided anti-aircraft defense. USS Samuel B. Roberts, DE 413, fought and sank at the Battle off Samar alongside destroyers, engaging Japanese cruisers with her 3-inch guns until sunk. Number 44. Captain Ernest E. Evans, commanding officer of USS Johnston, was the first Native American in the Navy to receive the Medal of Honor. He was Cherokee and Creek. At his change of command ceremony, Evans told his crew, "This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go in harm's way, and anyone who doesn't want to go along had better get off right now." No one left. They followed him into battle, and 186 followed him to the bottom. Number 45. PT boats, patrol torpedo boats, were 80 feet long, made 40 knots, mounted 4 torpedoes and machine guns, and had a crew of 12 to 14. They operated at night in coastal waters, attacking enemy shipping and conducting raids. PT boats were made of plywood and gasoline engines. A single hit could set them ablaze. They relied on speed, darkness and surprise. Number 46. Lieutenant John F. Kennedy commanded PT 109 inches the Solomon Islands. On the 2nd of August 1943, PT-109 was rammed by the Japanese destroyer Amagiri and cut in half. 2 crew members were killed. Kennedy and the 10 survivors clung to the wreckage, then swam 3 miles to a small island. Kennedy towed an injured crew member by holding the man's life jacket strap in his teeth. They were rescued 6 days later. Kennedy received the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. He survived the war and became the 35th President, number 47. PT boat crews suffered 69% casualties, killed, wounded or missing. Of 531 boats built, 109 were destroyed in combat. Crews that survived one combat tour rarely volunteered for a second. The life expectancy was measured in missions, not months. They were called plywood coffins and floating coffins. Crews served anyway. Number 48. Battleships were no longer capital ships after Pearl Harbor, but they remained valuable for shore bombardment and anti-aircraft defense. The 16-inch guns on Iowa-class battleships could fire 2,700-pound shells 24 miles. They provided fire support for amphibious landings from Saipan to Okinawa. Battleship guns destroyed fortifications, bunkers, and troop concentrations that aircraft couldn't eliminate. Number 49. USS Nevada, sunk at Pearl Harbor and razed, bombarded Utah Beach on D-Day, Iwo Jima and Okinawa. USS California and USS West Virginia, also sunk at Pearl Harbor, returned to service and bombarded Japanese positions in the Philippines and Okinawa. The battleships that died at Pearl Harbor came back. They fought all the way to Japan. Number 50. The Iowa-class battleships, Iowa, New Jersey, Missouri and Wisconsin, were the largest, fastest battleships ever built by the United States. They displaced 57,000 tons, made 33 knots, mounted 9 16-inch guns and 25-inch guns, and had 12 inches of armour. They could keep pace with fast carriers and provided immense firepower. All 4 survived the war and served through the 1,990 seconds. Number 51. USS Missouri, BB-63, hosted the Japanese surrender ceremony on the 2nd of September 1945 in Tokyo Bay. General Douglas MacArthur, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, and representatives from Allied nations watched Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu and General Yoshijiro Umezu sign the instrument of surrender. World War II officially ended on Missouri's deck. The battleship is now a museum in Pearl Harbor, moored 1,000 yards from the USS Arizona Memorial. Number 52. Cruisers provided firepower between destroyers and battleships. Heavy cruisers mounted 8-inch guns, light cruisers mounted 6-inch guns. They escorted carriers, led destroyer squadrons, and fought surface actions. At the Battle of Guadalcanal, cruisers slugged it out with Japanese warships at ranges under 2,000 yards, point-blank range, where armour meant survival. Number 53. The Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, November 12–15, 1942, was a chaotic close-range brawl. USS San Francisco engaged the Japanese battleship Hiei at 3,000 yards. Both ships fired everything. San Francisco's bridge was destroyed, killing Admiral Daniel Callahan and most of the command staff. The ship survived. Hiei was crippled and scuttled the next day. The Americans lost 2 cruisers and 7 destroyers. Japan lost 2 battleships and a cruiser. The battle was a draw, but Japan withdrew. Guadalcanal was saved. Number 54. Rear Admiral Norman Scott commanded the cruiser force at the Battle of Cape Esperance on October 11–12, 1942. American ships surprised a Japanese force in darkness and sank a cruiser and destroyer. Scott was killed on the 13th of November 1942, when USS Atlanta's bridge was destroyed by shellfire during the naval battle of Guadalcanal. He was 53. The battles around Guadalcanal consumed admirals, ships and men in 6 months of continuous fighting. Number 55. PT boats, submarines, cruisers and destroyers fought in the Slot, the narrow waters between Guadalcanal and the surrounding islands. Night battles were common. Radar-equipped American ships had an advantage, but Japanese night-fighting optics and tactics were superior. Battles devolved into chaos, ships firing at muzzle flashes, torpedoes crossing wakes, collisions in darkness. The sea around Guadalcanal became known as Iron Bottom Sound for the dozens of ships on the bottom. Number 56. The Sullivan brothers George, Francis, Joseph, Madison and Albert served together aboard the light cruiser USS Juno. Navy policy discouraged siblings serving on the same ship, but the brothers insisted. On the 13th of November 1942, Juno was torpedoed during the naval battle of Guadalcanal. She broke in half and sank in 20 seconds. All 5 Sullivan brothers died. Their mother received 5 telegrams on the same day. Navy policy was changed. Siblings would no longer serve on the same ship. Number 57. Salvage operations at Pearl Harbor raised 6 of the 8 battleships. USS California and West Virginia were refloated, repaired and returned to service. USS Tennessee and Maryland, damaged but not sunk, were repaired and modernized. USS Pennsylvania, in dry dock during the attack, was repaired. USS Nevada, beached to prevent sinking, was refloated and repaired. Only Arizona and Oklahoma remained on the harbor bottom. Number 58. Captain Homer Wallin directed the Pearl Harbor salvage operations. His team raised ships weighing tens of thousands of tons, patched holes, pumped out flooded compartments, and cut away damaged sections. The salvage took 3 years. Wallin's expertise saved 6 battleships and dozens of smaller vessels. Without his work, the Navy would have taken years longer to rebuild. He retired as a Vice Admiral in 1956 and died in 1984 at age 91. Number 59. Seabees, construction battalions, built airfields, bases, roads and port facilities across the Pacific. They landed with assault troops, sometimes under fire, and began construction immediately. Seabees built Quonset huts, repaired runways, unloaded ships, and provided engineering support. Their motto was, "Can do." Over 325,000 men served in the Seabees. Over 200 were killed in action. Number 60. On Guadalcanal, Seabees repaired Henderson Field under Japanese artillery fire and air attack. They filled bomb craters at night, graded runways, and kept aircraft flying. Some Seabees picked up rifles and fought alongside Marines when Japanese attacks broke through the lines. After the war, a Marine Corps general said, "The Marine Corps could not have won on Guadalcanal without the Seabees." Number 61. Amphibious operations required specialized ships. LST's landing ship, Tang, were 328 feet long, displaced 4,000 tons, and could carry 20 Sherman tanks, or 2,100 tons of cargo. They beached directly on shore, dropped a ramp, and unloaded. Over 1,000 LSTs were built. They were slow, ugly, and indispensable. Sailors called them large, slow targets. Number 62. LCIs, landing craft infantry, carried 200 troops and had a crew of 24. LCVPs, landing craft, vehicle, personnel, carried 36 troops or a jeep and had a crew of 3. Thousands were built. They ferried troops from transport ships to beaches under fire. Coxswains drove them through surf, bullets and explosions. Some made dozens of trips in a single day. Number 63. Coxswain Douglas Munro commanded LCVPs at Guadalcanal on the 27th of September 1942. He evacuated 500 Marines trapped on a beach under Japanese fire. After the Marines were loaded, Munro positioned his LCVP between the Marines and Japanese positions, absorbing fire to protect the other boats. He was killed by a machine gun burst. His last words were, "Did they get off?" He received the Medal of Honor posthumously, the only Coast Guardsman to receive it during World War II. Number 64. Hospital ships rescued wounded sailors and Marines from battle zones. USS Comfort AH-6 and USS Solace AH-5 treated thousands of casualties. They were painted white with red crosses, brightly lit at night, and protected under international law. Most combatants respected hospital ships, some didn't. Comfort was hit by a kamikaze on the 28th of April 1945, killing 28 medical personnel. The kamikaze pilot either didn't recognize the ship or didn't care. Number 65. Navy corpsmen served with Marine units. They provided first aid under fire, carried wounded men to safety, and performed emergency surgery in foxholes. Corpsmen were unarmed, prohibited under the Geneva Conventions from carrying weapons. Japanese soldiers targeted corpsmen anyway. Corpsmen saved thousands of Marines. Many died trying. Number 66. Pharmacist's mate Third Class John Harlan Willis threw back 8 Japanese grenades during the Battle of Iwo Jima on the 28th of February 1945. He was treating wounded Marines in a bunker when grenades landed nearby. He picked them up and threw them out before they exploded. The 9th grenade exploded in his hand, killing him. He received the Medal of Honor posthumously. He was 23. Number 67. Kamikazes appeared in October 1944 during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Japanese pilots deliberately crashed their aircraft into American ships, sacrificing themselves to damage or sink the target. The tactic was called Divine Wind, the storm that destroyed Mongol invasion fleets in the 13th century. By war's end, over 2,800 kamikaze pilots had died in attacks. Number 68. Kamikazes sank 47 ships and damaged over 300. Most victims were destroyers, destroyer escorts, and small vessels on radar picket duty. Carriers were primary targets but harder to sink. USS Franklin, Bunker Hill and Saratoga survived kamikaze hits despite catastrophic damage. The psychological impact on crews was severe. Sailors watched planes dive toward them and had seconds to respond. Some ships were hit repeatedly. Number 69. Radar picket destroyers. Stationed around the fleet detected incoming aircraft and directed fighters to intercept them. Picket ships were the first targets kamikazes encountered. Destroyers USS Laffey, USS Hyman, and dozens of others absorbed repeated attacks. Laffey was hit by 6 kamikazes and 4 bombs on the 16th of April 1945 off Okinawa. She survived. 32 crew members died. 71 were wounded. The ship stayed afloat and returned to service. Number 70. Anti-aircraft gunnery improved dramatically during the war. Early warships had limited anti-aircraft weapons. By 1945, ships bristled with 20mm and 40mm guns. Proximity-fused shells, directed by radar fire control, shot down aircraft at ranges previously impossible. The problem was volume. Kamikazes attacked in waves. Gunners shot down dozens, but if one got through, it was enough. Number 71. Damage control saved more ships than armor or armament. Trained crews fought fires, shored up bulkheads, pumped flooded compartments, and maintained buoyancy. Ships that should have sunk stayed afloat because damage control parties refused to quit. Men worked in smoke-filled compartments, fought fires with seawater hoses, and sealed breaches with mattresses and wooden beams. The difference between survival and sinking was training and determination. Number 72. USS Laffey's damage control parties fought fires for 80 minutes after the kamikaze attacks ceased. They extinguished flames that reached the magazines, controlled flooding that threatened to capsize the ship, and kept the engines running. When asked how Laffey survived, the captain said, "My crew wouldn't let her sink." Number 73. Carrier aircraft shot down 14,800 Japanese aircraft during the war. Anti-aircraft guns from ships shot down another 1,900. Submarines, PT boats, and shore-based aircraft accounted for the rest. By 1945, Japan had lost most of its experienced pilots. Replacements had minimal training. American pilots called them easy meat. The disparity in training, experience, and equipment was overwhelming. Number 74. Commander David McCampbell shot down 34 Japanese aircraft, the most of any Navy pilot. On the 24th of October 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, he shot down 9 aircraft in a single mission. He landed with 6 rounds of ammunition remaining and fuel for 10 minutes of flight. He received the Medal of Honor and survived the war. He died in 1996 at age 86. Number 75. Navy ace Cecil Harris scored the last aerial victory of the war on the 15th of August 1945, shooting down a Japanese fighter hours after Japan announced surrender. He flew an F-6F Hellcat from USS Enterprise. The Japanese pilot either hadn't received the surrender message or refused to accept it. Harris returned to Enterprise in tears, realizing he'd killed a man on the day the war ended. Number 76. The battle flag of USS Enterprise hangs in the Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C. It bears 20 battle stars, one for each major engagement. Veterans of Enterprise held reunions until the last survivors died. They mourned that their ship wasn't preserved. They accepted that memory would have to suffice. The flag remains. Number 77. Logistics won the Pacific War. Fleet oilers refueled ships at sea. Ammunition ships rearmed them. Provision ships supplied food. Repair ships fixed battle damage. Hospital ships treated casualties. The fleet train allowed carrier task forces to remain at sea for months without returning to port. Japanese forces had no equivalent. Their ships had to return to base to resupply, losing time and initiative. Number 78. The Navy operated 6,768 ships by August 1945, 28 carriers, 23 battleships, 72 cruisers, 377 destroyers, 361 destroyer escorts, 232 submarines, and thousands of support vessels. Manning this fleet required 3.4 million sailors. Training them required an infrastructure that didn't exist in 1941. Boot camps, gunnery schools, flight training, damage control schools, and technical schools were built in months and produced trained sailors by the hundreds of thousands. Number 79. The V-12 Navy College Training Program sent 130,000 men to universities for technical training. Engineers, doctors, and specialists were needed for modern warships. The Navy paid tuition, room, and board. Students graduated, received commissions, and reported to ships. Some served on carriers they'd studied in engineering classes. Others became doctors on hospital ships. The program transformed the Navy into a technologically sophisticated force. Number 80. African American sailors served in segregated units throughout most of the war. They were restricted to mess steward and labor roles until 1944. In 1944, the Navy began training African Americans for general service roles. By war's end, African Americans served in nearly all ratings, though segregation remained. Full integration didn't occur until 1948. Number 81. Mess attendant Doris Dory Miller manned a .50 caliber machine gun during the Pearl Harbor attack, despite having no training on the weapon. He fired until the ammunition ran out. He received the Navy Cross, the first African-American so honored. He died in 1943 when his ship, USS Liscombe Bay, was torpedoed. He was 24. The Navy named a destroyer escort, USS Miller, DE-1091, in his honor in 1973. Number 82. Women served in the waves. Women accepted for volunteer emergency service. Over 100,000 women served as yeomen, cryptologists, air traffic controllers, and instructors. They couldn't serve at sea or in combat but filled shore roles, freeing men for combat duty. Waves operated radios, decoded messages, maintained aircraft, and taught navigation. Without them, the Navy couldn't have expanded as rapidly. Number 83. Cryptologists at Station Hypo in Pearl Harbor broke Japanese naval codes. Commander Joseph Rochefort led the team. Their work provided intelligence that led to the Midway victory. Rochefort received no public recognition during the war. In 1985, 30 years after his death, he was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. His codebreakers' work saved thousands of lives and shortened the war by months or years. Number 84. The surrender ceremony on USS Missouri on the 2nd of September 1945 was filmed and photographed. General Douglas MacArthur signed for the Allies. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz signed for the United States. Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu signed for Japan with a wooden leg. He'd lost his leg in a 1932 assassination attempt. The ceremony lasted 23 minutes. World War II was over. Number 85. Sailors lined the rails of Missouri and every ship in Tokyo Bay during the surrender. Aircraft from carriers flew overhead in formation. Battleships, cruisers and destroyers filled the bay, symbols of American power. 4 years earlier, Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor, expecting America to sue for peace. Instead, America built a fleet larger than all other navies combined. Number 86. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz commanded the Pacific Fleet from Pearl Harbor throughout the war. He planned operations, allocated resources, and oversaw the island-hopping campaign. He was calm, strategic, and respected by his subordinates. After the war, he served as Chief of Naval Operations. He died in 1966 at age 80. He's buried in Golden Gate National Cemetery in San Francisco. Number 87. Admiral William Bull Halsey commanded the South Pacific Forces and later the Third Fleet. He was aggressive, beloved by his men, and prone to taking risks. Halsey's carriers struck Japanese positions from the Solomons to the Philippines. He made mistakes. He sailed his fleet into typhoons twice, losing ships and aircraft. But his aggressive leadership drove the advance toward Japan. Number 88. Admiral Raymond Spruance commanded the Fifth Fleet and was Halsey's opposite, calm, cautious, calculating. Spruance won at Midway, commanded at the Philippine Sea, and directed operations at Iwo Jima and Okinawa. He avoided unnecessary risks, conserved forces, and achieved objectives with minimal losses. After the war, he served as ambassador to the Philippines. He died in 1969 at age 83. Number 89. The Navy Marine Corps team fought together throughout the Pacific. Marines assaulted beaches. Navy ships provided fire support. Carrier aircraft struck enemy positions. Seabees built airfields. Corpsmen treated casualties. The integration of air, sea and ground power became the template for modern amphibious warfare. The lessons learned at Tarawa, Saipan and Okinawa shaped military doctrine for 80 years. Number 90. The cost was staggering. The Navy lost 36,950 killed, 37,778 wounded and 4,178 missing or captured. 349 ships were sunk. Hundreds more were damaged. Some sailors served for 45 consecutive months in combat zones without rotating home. They fought because they volunteered, because their country needed them, and because quitting wasn't an option. Number 91. Returning veterans resumed civilian lives. Submarine commanders became businessmen. Carrier pilots became airline captains. Seabees became construction workers. Most never spoke about their service. Families respected the silence. Only in old age did some veterans begin talking, prompted by grandchildren or historians documenting their stories before they were lost. Number 92. The last surviving Pearl Harbor veteran, Lou Conter, died in 2024 at age 102. He served on USS Arizona, survived the attack, and flew PBY patrol planes for the rest of the war. With his death, no living witnesses remain. Memory becomes history. Testimony becomes archive. The voices fall silent. Number 93. Museums preserve the ships. USS Missouri, USS Intrepid, USS Yorktown, CV-10, not the Midway ship, USS Hornet, CV-12, USS Lexington, CV-16, USS Texas, USS Alabama, and dozens more are open to the public. Visitors walk the decks, touch the guns, and stand where sailors fought. The ships are steel and memory, monuments to what was sacrificed and what was saved. Number 94. Submarine USS Bowfin, SS-287, is preserved in Pearl Harbor near the Arizona Memorial. Visitors descend into cramped compartments and see where 80 men lived for months. Torpedoes rest in tubes. Gauges line the control room. The diesel smell lingers 80 years later. Standing inside a submarine makes the sacrifice real. These men fought in steel tubes underwater, voluntarily. Number 95. The Tokyo Bay surrender location is marked on Missouri's deck with a plaque. Visitors stand where MacArthur stood. The table where documents were signed is preserved. The American flag flying from Missouri that day, the same flag Commodore Perry flew in 1853 when he opened Japan to the west, is displayed at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. Number 96. The Pacific War was not inevitable. Choices by leaders on both sides made it happen. Once begun, it consumed millions of lives and reshaped the world. The Navy that entered the war at Pearl Harbor was destroyed. The Navy that emerged was unrecognizable, larger, more powerful and technologically advanced beyond imagination. 4 years transformed everything. Number 97. American shipyards that built Liberty ships, LSTs and destroyers closed after the war. Workers returned to peacetime jobs. Production stopped. Ships were mothballed or scrapped. The industrial mobilization that built the fleet dissolved. Within a decade, most of the physical infrastructure was gone. Only the ships remained, rusting in reserve fleets or patrolling as active units. Number 98. The lessons of the Pacific War shaped the Navy for generations. Carrier aviation became the dominant force. Submarines shifted from commerce raiding to strategic deterrence. Amphibious warfare doctrine was refined. The Navy that fought in Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, and global conflicts for 80 years drew on lessons learned between Pearl Harbor and Tokyo Bay. Number 99. Oral histories recorded in the 1992s and 2000s captured veterans' memories. Thousands of hours of interviews are archived at the National World War II Museum, Library of Congress, and university collections. Veterans described fear, bravery, loss, and survival. They spoke of ships long since scrapped, comrades long since dead, and battles long since forgotten by everyone except those who fought them. Number 100. The sea where battles were fought is quiet now. Iron Bottom Sound off Guadalcanal, the Philippine Sea, Leyte Gulf, and the waters off Okinawa show no trace of the carnage. Ships rest on the bottom. Coral grows on steel hulls. Fish swim through compartments where men died. The ocean reclaimed it all. Only the survivors remembered. And now even they are gone. Number 101. Between the 7th of December 1941 and the 2nd of September 1945, the U.S. Navy grew from 347 ships and 161,000 personnel to 6,768 ships and 3.4 million sailors. It fought in every ocean, sank 1,300 Japanese ships, landed Marines on dozens of islands, and projected power from Hawaii to Japan. The cost was 36,950 dead and 349 ships lost. The result was victory. The fleet that rose from Pearl Harbor's burning harbor sailed into Tokyo Bay and accepted Japan's surrender on the deck of a battleship flying the American flag. The war was over. The ships returned home. The sailors came back, most of them. And the navy that had been forged in fire, tested in blood, and proven in battle became the standard against which every other navy would be measured for the next 80 years.